Hello guys, welcome to Livestock Clinic. My name still remains Mr. Benante, the livestock technician. Today we are going to look at the various measures you are supposed to put in place before your birds finally arrives. Now, you are done with your structure, you have prepared your feed and it is there. So the next stage is to prepare for your birds to arrive. So before your birds arrives, you need to do a thorough cleaning of the pen. If it's a new pen or it's an old one, if it's an old one, you are supposed to collect all the litter, that is if it is deep litter, and wash the room, clean, take out all the cobwebs, and clean everywhere, wash your drinkers, your feeders, wash virtually everything, and then clean it thoroughly, disinfect every part, disinfect your drinkers, disinfect your feeders, disinfect everything in the pen so that all disease pathogens will be wiped out before you bring in your fresh day old chicks. So after disinfection, you allow the pen and every other thing to dry up. So if everything dries up, so if there is the need for you to cover the sideways with whatever material, be it rubber or whatever, to cover the sideways so that too much air cannot get into the poultry pen, because you are bringing day old and too much cold may kill them. So you do all that and then disinfect the pen, allow it to dry, and then you heat up the pen to allow it to get to a temperature of 32 to 34 degrees Celsius. So before the birds come, you will do that so that once they come, the temperature is conducive for them. You don't have to bring them before you try to push the temperature to the 32 and 34. You do that, and usually you do that 24 hours before you bring your birds, so that once they come, the temperature will be ideal and conducive for them to start feeding immediately. Because if your birds come and then because of the cold they don't want to feed, and for whatever reason they don't want to feed, then you have a problem. Because at that age, what they should be doing is to feed so that they can grow very well for you, and then the mortality will not be that much. So after keeping the temperature to 32 and 34 degrees Celsius, then you can now bring your birds. So if the distance between your farm and where you sourced the birds is very far, definitely when they come they will be fatigued because of the long distance, and depend on the means of transportation you are going to use to bring them. If it's our usual normal cars, then definitely they'll be fatigued because the road might not be good, the shakings and what have you. By the time you get there, they'll be so tired. So when that happens, there's the need to give them an energy boost so that they can start to feed. If not, with that fatigue nature, they may not be able to feed, and that will be very bad. So you boost their energy by giving them glucose. So your glucose should be ready if you are going to source them from a very far away distance. Your glucose should be ready so that you can dissolve it into the drinkers and make it ready for them so that they can drink it, get enough energy to feed. Yeah. So before you introduce them into the pen, feed should be made ready and your glucose water should be ready, and then before you usher them into the pen, so that once they land, they should start eating and drinking. Yeah. But if the distance is not far, if the hatchery is closer to your pen, and in that there wouldn't be any fatigue, or if they didn't last much longer in the hatchery, most hatcheries will hatch them, keep them in the hatchery for a very long time. So by so doing, there will be the need for you to give them an energy booster, because by then they probably would have depleted the small food they have in their system. Yeah. So if they kept them in the hatchery for a very long time, you should boost them with the glucose. But if you didn't keep them in the hatchery for a very long time, and then the distance from your farm to the hatchery happens not to be far, then you can decide not to give them the glucose. You just have to give them the ordinary water. And most people also give them vaccines. On their first day, they start giving them their first Newcastle vaccine, and then infectious bronchitis vaccines. So if your pen is an old pen, and then you have issues of Newcastle and infectious bronchitis, then there's the need to start giving them from the first day. So you can go and then get your vaccines early in the morning. You come and keep it in your fridge, not in your deep freezer, not in the freezer, but the fridge. So you can keep the vaccine in the fridge, and you starve them of water. So you don't expose them to water, you don't give them water so that they get thirsty. So when you give them the vaccine, they can drink it and drink it within a short possible time, because most vaccines last for 1 hour, others are even less than that. So within 1 hour or 1.5 hours, if the vaccine is not drunk, it becomes useless. So that is why you have to take water from them to prevent them from getting access to water before you give them the vaccine, so that when they are thirsty, once the vaccine comes, they will be able to drink it very fast. But mostly the vaccines that are given to them at that age, as in day old, the very first day you bring them, is usually given to them through their eyes. Yeah, so you can give them by ocular admission or eye drop. So you can either get them the H120 variant of the Newcastle or the HB1. Okay, so but if your farm happens to be a fresh and a new farm, and then no one has introduced any disease agents into the farm area, then you can decide not to give them any of the vaccine. But you can decide to give them the infectious bronchitis, because usually that disease is usually gotten at the hatchery because it's transmitted via the eggs. So if a certain farmer has it and brings it to the hatchery, or if the dairy chicks that is sold to you, some of the eggs, if they happen to be infected, then you would have to treat them with the infectious bronchitis at that age. All things being equal, if your farm is a new farm, you don't need to give them any vaccine. Okay, so because they are day old, the environmental temperature is supposed to be controlled by you. So you would have to be monitoring them to see as and when there's a need for the temperature to be regulated. So usually you look at the bird's behavior to be able to know if the temperature is too high for them or too cold for them, or is okay for them. So I even forgot to mention this. You are supposed to provide heat. You are supposed to provide heat source for them, either in the form of bulbs. The 200 and 100 watts bulbs could give them enough energy, could provide them enough warmth. Or you could use coal pots, or there are several improvised ways people use to provide them warmth. So when the temperature is very cold, you see all the birds gathering around the source of heat. So whatever you use as your source of heat, you see them gathering around it, hooding around each other. Yeah, so once you see that, then you should know that your birds are feeling cold and you are supposed to increase the temperature. But if the temperature is too high for them, you see them moving away from the source of heat and moving away from each other. So they will just be lying there separately from each other, far away from the sources of heat that you have provided for them. Then from there, you need to go and reduce the source of heat. But if the heat is normal for them, then you see them evenly distributed in the pen. Everybody undergoing its activity, whether they are eating or relaxing or whatever. But if the temperature is too high, they will not eat. Why? Because eating will result to metabolism, which will provide extra heat, which they don't like. But if the temperature is cold, ideally they are supposed to eat so that metabolism can happen and they can produce heat to heat their bodies. But because the coldness is too much, they rather prefer hooding around themselves and getting closer to the source of heat instead of eating. So that is why it's important to regulate their temperature and make sure that the environmental temperature is conducive for them, is optimal, so that they can continue to eat for you. And then when they get to their 7th day, or when they get 1 week, you can debeak them. So you can debeak them so that the act of practicing cannibalism will reduce. So the remaining medication program, I'm going to make a separate video for that. This is pretty much what you're supposed to do before your birds arrives and after they have arrived. So I'm going to make a video that will talk about the various breeds that we have and their advantages and disadvantages, and based on that you can make an informed decision as to which of them you are going for or which of them you want to farm. So till I see you on our next video, peace out.